Cormani McClain is still in the transfer portal, which is kind of crazy. There are a bunch of other top targets as well. So, Cormani McClain is the highest rated player available in the transfer portal according to 24/7 Sports. There are others who we'll talk about, but McClain is maybe the most interesting. He's perhaps the most recognizable name because he was a big-time recruit coming out of high school. He was going to go to Miami, then he flipped to Colorado, and it was indicative at the time of how great Deion Sanders could be on the recruiting trail. He went into Florida, got the number one corner. Look at this guy. He played a little as a true freshman. It didn't go great, and he's in the portal. He's still there. He has not found a new home, which leads me to believe that there's something that we don't know that everyone else does know. Because when you look at his recruiting profile, pretty hard to deny his physical traits. They're pretty elite. But he still hasn't found anyone. Usually guys like that get plucked up immediately. And that just hasn't happened yet. I don't doubt that he's going to find a home. He's been tied to a variety of schools. South Florida could be a home for him in the American Conference. Memphis from that league has reached out to him as well. But something feels weird or off when a guy who is that talented, when a guy who was that highly recruited but hasn't really demonstrated a lot in his college career doesn't find a home. Something's off. I don't know what. I do not know what, but Cormani McClain's the top available player in the transfer portal, could go and make an impact somewhere this season, but he is not the only guy. So Jacoby Matthews is a former five-star safety from Texas A&M, the second of three former five stars I'll be talking about here on this segment. Matthews has been tied to Ohio State. He would be the second five-star safety commit that Ohio State has gotten out of the transfer portal this cycle, joining Caleb Downs. Now, Matthews initially had a lot of interest from Oregon and Florida State. Those were the top two runners. But Oregon's probably out of that mix because, number one, there has been absolutely no buzz about Matthews in Oregon. I haven't been able to hear anything from anyone that covers the Ducks about whether or not they're having him on campus for another visit or whether they're talking. And Oregon just added safety Peyton Woodyard out of the transfer portal from Alabama, who's a 2024 recruit. I wouldn't think they'll go after Matthews now. I think the Woodyard addition makes it so that they're not going to be interested, or they weren't interested. Not sure what's going on there, but Ohio State is the latest team to watch there in the former five stars recruitment. Terrence Brooks is another name. Now, Terrence Brooks, former five-star corner from the University of Texas, who has hit the transfer portal. I laugh sometimes at all of this and the craziness that can ensue, but nothing gives me more of a chuckle. Not a laugh, just a chuckle. When I see a graphic in which Terrence Brooks has heard from these schools since entering the transfer portal. And he is a former five-star, has got a lot more interest and intrigue, it seems, than Cormani McClain does. Make of that whatever you will. But there's a graphic that went out about Terrence Brooks, and it said, he's got his name in the transfer portal. He's heard from these schools. The school logos took up the entire graphic. It was literally, I didn't count the number, it was over a dozen, approaching 20 schools he has heard from reportedly since going into the transfer portal. I don't think he's narrowed it down. Or maybe someone just wanted to put out a graphic so it'd get talked about on a show like this one. I don't know. You tell me. But what I do know is that you've got three former five-star defensive backs in the transfer portal. And whatever their careers have been so far, it's unlikely guys of that caliber transfer somewhere and then don't make an impact. You know, a recent example would be Justin Flo, who went to Oregon, was a big-time recruit, one of their highest-rated recruits ever. He transferred to Arizona, and though he wasn't one of their top linebackers, he still made an impact. He was still a notable player on that Arizona defense last year. Any of these guys, just because of how physically gifted they are, will find a new home and go and play. They're not going to go and sit. They're not going to go and get beat out for at least a spot on the 2 deep at the very least. That's just not likely. And I think they're all guys that are going to look to go and make a starting caliber impact somewhere. Another name to look at, I'll come back to the wide receiver in just a moment, but Tyler Barron, who was very briefly at Louisville, and then, well, he's played at Tennessee. So let's just think of him as a Tennessee transfer. Because once upon a time, Barron was going to play football for Ole Miss. Then he was going to play for Louisville. Now he's back in the transfer portal. 24/7 Sports thinks he's one of the 5 most highly coveted transfer targets currently uncommitted. And that's because he is a 4-star recruit coming out of high school. He's going into his 5th and final year of college football. He plays along the defensive line at the edge position. And guys that have played for 4 years and have got good physical traits, they don't come around super often. So Tyler Barron is a name to monitor there. But for those who get frustrated at the mercenary nature of college football and the athletes that are going from school to school, Tyler Barron could be the poster child for you. Doesn't mean he can't come to your team and make you forget about that really quickly, because he's someone who can come in and make an impact on your defensive line. Remember, you cannot enter the transfer portal anymore, but you can come out of the transfer portal anytime. There are still dozens, there are probably hundreds, maybe even thousands of players that are still in the transfer portal seeking new homes. These are just the highest rated ones according to 24/7 Sports. And frankly, I think the best available, I think he is underrated in these transfer rankings right now, is Elijah Badger. And Elijah Badger has heard from a couple of different spots, including the University of Arizona, which I'll get to in a moment. Washington has expressed interest with Denzel Boston, and I just blanked on Jeremiah Hunter's name, the Cal transfer. That could be a lethal receiving trio. Graham Mertz might be looking to get a weapon even after they picked up Keandre Lambert-Smith from Penn State. The guy I'm most interested in the transfer portal, though, is Elijah Badger. So Badger is the 6th highest rated available player according to 24/7 Sports. I think he's underrated in that sense. Not that these other guys can't be good, but if you talk about making an impact right away, Elijah Badger can be that guy. I think he is a bona fide number 1 wide receiver. That caliber of player is in the portal right now. He's going to find a home. He's heard from Arizona, who I'll talk about in just a moment. Washington has expressed interest. If they put him with Denzel Boston and Jeremiah Hunter, that could be a potent receiving core for Will Rogers up there in Seattle. Florida has expressed interest after Keandre Lambert-Smith didn't go to Florida, decided to go to Auburn instead. That could be a potential fit. But Arizona is really intriguing because the Wildcats have lost several starters this offseason, and a lot of them went up with Jedd Fisch to Seattle, but most notably, Tetairoa McMillan, the wideout, and Noah Fafita, the quarterback, have remained. But guy that they don't have, who was a huge part of their success last year, is Jacob Cowing. Now, Cowing is a different sort of wide receiver than Elijah Badger, but having 2 guys on the perimeter, if you put Tetairoa McMillan and Elijah Badger on the same field, not only would Arizona State fans probably be a little ticked off at it and make the duel in the desert all the more interesting, but you would have one of the most dynamic receiving tandems, not just in the Big 12, but in all of college football. McMillan was a 1,400-yard guy this past year with Arizona and could even build upon that going into 2024. He and Noah Fafita are trying to raise their NFL draft profiles going into the season. Could very well do that if Arizona performs better than I expect them to. I think they are under that 8.5 win total according to our friends at FanDuel. So for Arizona, that would be a massive, massive pickup. I think for Florida, it would be a nice addition. I think for Washington, it would be a nice addition. But the need, the fit, the immediate impact for a team that's trying to make a push for a conference championship this year, Arizona is the place where Badger would go amongst those schools. Now, others have, reportedly gotten in the mix a time or two, and certainly he could go play anywhere. He's that sort of player. Yards after catch, contested catches, everything you want, number 1 wide receiver, Elijah Badger's got it. So I'm really, really high on the former Sun Devil, and wherever he goes, he can have a 1,000-yard season, even as a number 2 guy. He and Tetairoa McMillan could both have 1,000-yard seasons with the Wildcats this year if he decides to play in Tucson after spending the last couple of years in Tempe. And he hasn't had great quarterback play for the last couple of years. This is a guy who can put up big time numbers. So Watch for all those names. According to 24/7 Sports, those are the highest rated players available. I didn't even mention a guy like Elijah Herring, Tennessee's leading tackler last year, who's in the portal. But I think that Elijah Badger is the guy that is still out there who makes the biggest impact on the field come 2024. We'll see where he ends up. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.